you know why God made cops?
No.
Because firemen still need heroes. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Squad Room. It's going to be epic. You're going to learn a lot, I promise, on this one, because I learned a lot too. Not saying that I don't learn a lot on all the other ones. My mind is consistently blown. That's why I'm doing this. But I had a lot of fun on this episode because I learned about a topic that I already have a interest in from a hobby level, and I learned some things that are going to help me get better at it. And I always like doing that. And I think if you like cooking, then you're going to learn a lot of stuff. And if you hate to cook, you're going to learn a lot of stuff. Hopefully some of the stuff is going to improve your techniques, but also reduce that level of fear, frustration, and intimidation when you step up to the stove or the grill or the oven. And it's going to be fantastic. So we'll get to that in a second. A couple housekeeping things first. Of course, special thanks to CrossFit Pacific Coast, Traver Bohm and Eric Malzone over there. Go check them out at crossfitpacificcoast.com if you're curious about their programming or their ethos and what they're doing. They've been with me side by side this entire way through this process, and we are many months in at this point. And follow us on Twitter or Instagram at The Squad Room. Want to hear from you guys. I want to hear what you like, what you don't like, what you would like to have happen. Email me at squadroompodcast@gmail.com. But what I really want to emphasize is go to thesquadroom.net, www.thesquadroom.net, and sign up for our newsletter. I send this stuff to you so you get it in your inbox the minute an episode is live, and we're going to be really enhancing that avenue or that channel, to use business speak, in the near future, to really include and interact with that group a lot more, to include some contests, some giveaways, some surveys, that sort of stuff, so we can learn more about you and serve you a little bit better. And when I say we a lot, but I still mean me. I don't have a team here. It's just me, but I guess I sound more important when I use we. Anyway, go to the website and please sign up for the newsletter. If you're so inclined, you can leave a review at iTunes as well. Give us a 5-star review and let everyone else know about it as well. This is going to be a fun episode because we do talk about cooking and meal prep and equipment and all the things that you need to know. Well, not everything you need to know, but a lot of the key things that you need to know that were hang-ups for me in learning how to cook, or that I know are hang-ups for other people. Our guest today is Joel Chapman. He's a professional chef. He's got some legit credentials behind his name. Graduate of Le Cordon Bleu in Paris, France, which is the preeminent cooking school in the world. So he knows what he's talking about. He has a unique position right now, too, where he's cooking for a large catering division of food services at a large university. So he's making a massive amount of meals a day. So he's able to talk about the meal prep and planning and scaling that goes into that. And he also, of course, cooks at home, and he meal preps at home. So he's got a lot of good tips and tricks on how to prep ahead of time, and again, the equipment to use and that sort of stuff. So stay tuned for Joel Chapman, professional chef. All right, Joel, thanks for being on the show.
Oh, you're very welcome.
We're back here in the professional recording studio. We have a mutual friend in Traver, who introduced us, because I asked him, I need to speak to someone who knows how to cook. He said, I got the guy.
Yeah, that would be me.
And you're that guy. So I know about you now because we've corresponded and had some good correspondence. But can you tell everybody that's listening maybe your background and why you are the guy that knows how to cook?
Sure. So I've always grown up in kitchens. I studied at Le Cordon Bleu in Paris and spent 3 years in France cooking in restaurants and pastry shops. And while I was there, I couldn't get a work visa, so I worked as a private chef on a yacht in the south of France, doing Monaco, Cannes. It was a pretty amazing experience. And then I came over to Santa Barbara and started my own catering company, which didn't last, unfortunately. And then just got into working out and road biking, and I met Traver, our mutual friend, through CrossFit, and started from there.
Excellent. He's got stories of being on yachts as a private security guard or bodyguard
Yes.
on the south of France. That's not where you guys first connected?
No, we actually connected through Toastmasters,
Oh.
of all places.
Oh, okay.
We were the youngest by about 20 years. And so we had a mutual affinity for each other just off that.
Just the fact that you both, could stand upright still?
Exactly, basically.
Not that I guess I shouldn't be that mean. It's not meant to be mean. Toastmasters is fine.
Yeah, it's good.
So, Le Cordon Bleu, that's pretty legit. I mean, there's it's that or Culinary Institute is kind of the American version, right, of that. But there's not a better school out there than Le Cordon Bleu, and of all places, Paris.
Right, yeah. So for me, I wanted to learn really at ground zero of where it all started from. I mean, if you talk to other chefs, that's definitely debatable. But, if you think about food and learning to cook, everyone wants to go to France and have their experience there.
Yeah.
So,
did you work in restaurants growing up, or what got you intrigued by that?
well, my mom was a nutritionist, so I was always her guinea pig. And so she was always making dishes that were inexpensive to make, but highly nutritious. She worked for WIC. I don't know. It's Women's, Infants, and Children.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So low income. So people with not a lot of money. So I would try.
Cops. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Most of us here in Santa Barbara.
Yeah. Most of it. Yeah. Anybody who lives in a zip code.
So I tried out, chocolate lentil cakes, and anything that she would make, I would try. And so,
sorry, chocolate lentil cakes.
Yes. Which I will not be giving the recipe for.
What do you say? Sounds nutritious?
It is
but
nutritious.
But then there's chocolate.
There is chocolate.
I don't know.
It's okay. Yeah.
And you're a bit of a chocolatier too, or is that just a something you enjoy?
I love chocolate, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't do chocolate anymore. Traver and I did have a business together making chocolates, but that fell through. But yeah, anything chocolate, put it in front of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You a dark chocolate or a milk chocolate guy?
Dark chocolate.
I guess we'll continue the podcast anyway. No, I have this ongoing debate with my wife, and apparently I'm on the losing side of it. That there's no such thing as good dark chocolate, and I am consistently informed by other people that I'm wrong. So I guess I got to shut up and admit defeat.
If you go to down to Calais Bresson, the chocolate shop, or Chocolate Maya, they've got tons of different chocolates.
Maybe that's the place that'll expand my mind.
Yeah. It becomes like wine after a while. There's different subtleties in different regions of the world where it comes from. Mm-hmm. And you can taste like what they call the terroir of it. But
interesting.
I'll take you down sometime. We'll
All
go
right.
chocolate tasting.
Can we go wine tasting afterwards?
Yes.
Excellent. All right, we'll do that. All right, so you went through Le Cordon Bleu, which is obviously one of the best schools, and you came back here. And right now you're cooking. What are you doing right now?
Right now I'm actually helping the catering department at UCSB do their thing there. We've got anywhere between 15 to 20 events per day. We cook up to for about 20,000. It's not 20,000, excuse me, about 2,000 people. It's kind of like room service for all of campus.
Wow.
And so I support the kitchen and also the front house too. So my hand is kind of everywhere there.
So when we get into the meal prep discussion, you're going to have some insight. I mean, I complain about making 3 meals a day.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when you get into catering, you realize that cooking for 10 and cooking for about 1,000 are relatively the same. It's just the amount of time you have. So we'll get into that later.
Yeah. So I wanted to have you. So I like to cook. Mm-hmm. I think I'm good for me. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, I like how I cook, but it's because it's mine.
Sure.
My wife at least feigns enthusiasm for how I cook, probably because I'm willing to cook. And I actually end up doing most of the meals in our house for whatever reason. It's just kind of how our work division ended up being.
Sure.
I'd rather cook than do the laundry. Sort of thing. So I'll cook. And I've loved to grill or barbecue. I'm sure I know there's a difference. Grill, like growing up in high school, that was like I love to do that. And my parents entertained me with that. And then, but through college and those first couple of years out of school, when you don't have any money, I was I never had an interest in it. It was always, Hamburger Helper or, the pasta's the cheap stuff that's quick and fast. And college kids aren't interested in necessarily cooking.
Sure.
It wasn't until I moved to California that I I took an interest in it because I was trying to lose weight, and so I had to take more control over what I was eating.
Right.
And I had to learn how to cook things like salmon, and began playing with that and spices and all that. And then I learned that it was a good way to impress girls.
Yes.
And that it was a good way to have a dinner date and cook for them. And then they thought you were upscale.
Yes.
And as a 23-year-old, in Los Angeles, where the competition's heavy, you take whatever advantage you can get.
Yeah, definitely.
And I will say too that I think that is, though she probably want to admit it, one of our first dates I cooked for my now wife, and I think it worked. So proof.
Yeah, definitely.
I think a lot of guys get into it either for that or out of necessity. Anyone who didn't go straight from mom's house to marriage, who spent most of their 20s like I did, not married as a bachelor, had to either eat out every night or figure out how to cook.
Right.
But a lot of trial and error. So my intent or my hope when talking about this today is to maybe kind of skip a couple steps for some of the guys who are looking at trying to lose weight, looking at trying to get better or healthier, are sick of the kind of the drive-through scene. They want to meal prep, but they may not know where to start, and they may not know. They might be intimidated by going into a Sur La Table or even just a Ross and looking at the kitchen section and thinking, well, I don't know what kind of stuff to get. So, if we can, maybe we can start with what would you say are some of the basic kitchen essentials? For and I know we're considering these are grown adults, right? So I mean, I'm sure people understand, knives and stuff like that. But what are some of the essentials of having a good meal prep and cooking setup?
Sure. Well, definitely your knives and cutting boards are key, and making sure you have enough space to do all your cooking, and having enough containers also, like bowls, spoons. And for me, when I prep, I make sure I have everything before I start, because you don't want to go back and skip a step. And like, oh, where's my spoon? Oh, I have to go over here, and you kind of lose momentum. And having, for me, a cast iron pan is essential, because you can put it not only on top of your oven, but also inside or even on your grill too. So and it's really versatile, and they last forever if you keep them up. Yeah.
Okay, so here's a question I have.
Sure.
Like lots of people, we got a knife set for our wedding.
Yeah.
And there's a camp that says you can't sharpen them ever. You will ruin the knives, and another camp that says no, it's safe to sharpen them. I imagine you can sharpen these.
Oh yeah.
They're not chef grade knives. They're
probably
Henkels
like Henkels or Wusthoffs. It's a decent knife. A lot of guys in kitchens run with those. They tend to be heavy, so some guys try to go for lighter knives. But you need to sharpen them, and there's usually a steel that comes with it. And it's probably best to go. I can't explain it on a podcast, but if you go to YouTube, how to use a steel. Basically, what happens when you're cooking, when you're chopping your knife blade, the really fine line you can't see actually goes to the side, and so your knife becomes dull. And so what you're doing when you're using a steel, you're actually resetting that so it's razor sharp, and just kind of resetting the metal so it goes straight down as opposed to the side. And just a couple swipes on a steel will set you straight. A lot of guys, send their knives out maybe once a year to get the edge resharpened, but these are guys who are doing thousands of hours in kitchens. So in a home, maybe every couple of years to get the edge reset.
Totally off topic, but since it's topic of knives, but chefs, your knives are like yours.
Yes.
They're like your baby.
Yes.
Right, and they go with you from. You see the guys coming to work or going from work, and they're leaving with their knife roll. I don't know what that's called.
Yeah,
but
that's correct.
They go home with them at the end of the night.
Yeah.
They come to them with work. They're different for each chef. It's a very personal and subjective thing, isn't it?
It is. Some people buying a car. You've got different grades, different qualities, different prices. But at the end of the day, they're all going to cut, and it's really what you're comfortable with. There's the aesthetic qualities of them. If they like a nice, beautiful knife, a lot of guys will never bring that to the kitchen because the pot washer will probably steal it, or use it to open up a can, which happens. And that's why chefs, we always take our knives with us, because if you leave them around, some of them will use them for an inappropriate use. which I've seen, and that's how fights happen in kitchens.
You mentioned Henkel's and was it Wisthoff?
Yeah, Wisthoff.
Any others that you could find at either Macy's or Bed Bath & Beyond that you would recommend? Or?
Schoon's really good. They're really beautiful. They're like handmade and hammers. They have really nice lines in them. But like for a solid kitchen knife, I mean, you can go to Ross and get a nice one that has the blade that goes all the way through the handle, which is called the tang that goes, in the handle, and they're solid.
So you're, most importantly, maybe that tang. It's the one piece of metal that goes into the handle from the blade itself.
Yeah,
that's strong.
Yeah, that's strong. And the thing is, you can go to Sur La Table or Williamson Sonoma and just go grab knives and test them out and see how they feel in your hand, because they'll all have different grips to them. Some are metal, some are wood. Some are, they're ergonomic, so they're maybe bulged on one side so it fits your hand better. Mm-hmm. It's really just personal preference and what's comfortable. And especially for chefs, like we know we're going to have this in our hands for many, many hours. So what's the most efficient way to hold this thing, and what's going to be the most comfortable? Mm-hmm. So that's what we're looking for.
And can you sharpen? You can't sharpen steak knives, though.
If they're serrated, no, you can't.
Or like a bread knife is serrated too, right?
It can be.
It can be?
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned containers. Do you notice or ever a difference between glass or like Tupperware or anything like that?
Not really. I mean, definitely like Tupperware for, if I'm going to take it, out with me or something. Mm-hmm. But if I'm just prepping around, just bowls are fine. So I have a place to put in like what I'm chopping, like onions or peppers. Mm-hmm. And the goal is to keep my cutting board clear so that I can do my next process.
You mentioned having everything ready to go beforehand. Does that mean just your equipment, or do you do? It's called what, mise en place?
Yeah, mise en place. Yeah, exactly.
Mise en place.
Mise en place. Yeah.
Okay. See, I didn't do so well in high school French. So
that's all right.
You spent 3 years there. I'm going to trust you. Do you find that? Do you do that, and do you find that to be more efficient in the end?
Definitely.
So if people don't know, can you explain what that is to people who don't understand what that is?
Sure. So mise en place means basically, if you translate it directly, to put in place. So everything's in place before you start. And the chefs, it's our mindset. It's everything's organized. I know where everything is. And this is really important, like if you're on a line in a restaurant. Mm-hmm. But if you're at your house cooking, you want to make sure, okay, you've got everything you're going to work on. So you've got a bowl for your finished product. Like say I'm going to cut peppers. So I got a bowl for the cut product. Then I also have a bowl too for my scraps. So I don't have to like, okay, where's my trash can? Or if I do have a trash can, I'll put it like to my left or right so I can just swipe it in there. And then, so usually I cut everything first and then go into like kind of like the hot production where then I'm going to cook it. So I always start with like, if I'm going to cut my peppers, my onions, and then cut some chicken breasts, always vegetables first, meat last. You don't want to cross-contaminate, and then get that ready, and then you can just kind of cook. And that's really the most enjoyable part, is actually the act of cooking and getting and preparing the dish that way. So that's what most chefs hate, the prep. They just love the cooking.
Yeah. It's like anything. It's like being trying to get fit.
Exactly.
You don't like the process. You just like being fit.
Exactly. So it's a very good correlation.
Same thing. Yeah. I like being a cop. Did not like the academy, but that prepped me to be a cop.
Exactly.
Same thing through everything in life.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got knives and boards. People often worry about, you said, cross-contamination, or like especially with chicken. There's a big fear about chicken or pork. Mm-hmm. Using the same cutting boards for... I understand the order, vegetables first, then poultry. But assuming those things are washed well and then put away, is there an issue of cross-contamination using that board again the next day?
Usually not. If you sanitize it, you're fine. What I recommend is actually having a vegetable cutting board and a meat cutting board. So you never have any question of like, oh, shoot, did I actually cut chicken on this? Normally, if you wash it, soap and water, hot water, put it in your dishwasher, that sanitizes it. You should be fine.
My wife's going to be so happy to hear that answer. She insisted we do that, and we have colored cutting boards for the vegetables and black ones for meat. So because I'm an idiot, so I need colors to match. And I still get it wrong. This is like 2-3 years later, but she insisted that was safer, and once again she's right about everything.
That tends to happen. But even at the professional level, we do have.
Oh, do you?
In the cutting boards, we've got green cutting boards for veg, yellow for chicken, red for raw meat, brown for cooked meat. We actually have like a purple for people who are like gluten-free or any allergies. So that's like the allergy board. And then white for like cutting bread and dairy. So it is actually,
wow.
It does work.
It does happen.
Yeah.
This may not be I thought made me think of another question when you talk about cross-contamination, and then you mentioned gluten and all that. Like, that cross-contamination's got to be minimal, right? For someone from at least a home chef level or a home cooking level, if you're trying to avoid wheat or gluten, but your kids are eating bread or whatever,
right?
I can't imagine that's going to be a big issue.
Yeah, unless you have like celiac disease, and I've cooked for people who can't be in the same room as pasta cooking.
Same room?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, just because it's in the air and they just can't deal with it. So
wow.
A lot of times you have to have a real dedicated area if you're going to be like completely gluten-free. A lot of places say they are, but they're more gluten-friendly because you can't really control, like if you're making bread, that flour goes into the air and you don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
So it's really minimal. The gluten contamination, the cross contamination, like, in a house that way, unless you have a real serious condition.
Do you have a particular diet you follow? I mean, are you like the paleo or Atkins or Zone or?
I don't actually. I just try to eat as much vegetables as possible. And if I'm counting calories, I don't even count vegetables as calories because they're great. And then I hardly eat any red meat, and I just use like fish, chicken. For me, I guess it's more like a Mediterranean diet. A lot of olive oils, nuts, fresh fruits, farmers market if I can get there.
Yeah, that's farmers markets are great. It's a shame. I think they're growing. We're lucky here because there's one. I think there's one almost every day of the week within driving distance of us. 5-10 minute drive. All right, so something that I'm still playing with that's a struggle that a lot of people don't understand or they don't. I think it's a hang up for them are spices. Like what other than salt and pepper, what else can you put in food? And my biggest critics, 3 and 7 years old each, probably complain there's too much oregano or there's too much basil in my dishes. But what are the 5, 6, however many spices you think are good starters and that might blend well with some of the basics foods?
Well, I guess the question was: is it dried oregano, dried basil, or is it fresh?
It's usually dried, but sometimes fresh. Yeah.
The thing about the dried herbs is they're going to be a lot stronger than your fresh herbs will be, just because they've dried and they've concentrated those flavors.
Oh, see, that's counterintuitive. I thought it would be less because it's been dried and that moisture has been sucked out. But no, it's okay.
Yeah,
well, then maybe my 3 and 7 year old are right.
They could be maybe just a little bit less. So yeah, definitely. Cilantro is interesting to use. It's pretty versatile. It's used in Mexican cooking, but also in Indian cooking. They call it coriander. Then fresh basil, of course.
Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Coriander is the same as cilantro?
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Really?
Yeah. So like the little seed is actually the cilantro seed. It's coriander.
I see. I mean, without having them side by side to compare, they taste so much different off the top of my head, but maybe I'm not paying attention. I'm thinking one is an Indian spice and maybe one is a Mexican spice.
Yeah, they're both the same.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Well, I learned something.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So if you're doing Indian dishes, I think, especially if you're getting into cooking, even having like a little box of curry powder, like the yellow curry powder, and then because then that'll transform dishes and it'll make your cooking a lot more interesting. Yeah, I use a lot of thyme, fresh thyme, even a little bit of dried thyme. I mean, those are really like European spices that everyone grew up with. Rosemary. I do have a small herb garden where I can go out, pick some fresh rosemary, come back, chop it up, finish my dishes with that. Usually, especially for fresh herbs, it's best to put them right at the end because if you have like a hot dish, the aromas will come out of that, and it'll be really, really nice. But I just had Indian food last night, and it's one of my favorite things to eat.
Me too.
Just because there's so many different spices they use and the different processes, and just like the U.S., there's different regions of India that they've got different spice blends, different heats, and
one thing I've learned, or it's been my experience, is that Indian foods, it's some of the easiest to learn because your margin of error is pretty big.
Sure.
So like if you underspice, it's still going to be good. It just may not be as spicy or as flavorful as you'd like it, but it's still certainly palatable. And even if it's overspiced, it's still pretty good. I mean, most if you go to like a legit Indian restaurant, it's going to be way more spicy than most Americans are ready for. And it like sweating, teared up, and that's not even the spicy version of the dish. And you're sweating through your shirt. So it's hard. I think that like curries to me were an easy one to pick up on pretty early because it's hard to screw those up.
Sure.
Especially if you're following a recipe. Like yellow curry or whatnot. So Indian food's full of spices. What about stuff like seasoning fish and cooking fish? Like that's very intimidating to a lot of people. And
it is, and I find that everyone overcooks it. I'm from Seattle, so salmon is my fish. I've cooked that for years, and I love it. But people tend to overcook it, and so no one really likes it. The thing about when you're cooking, you always have, it's called carryover cooking. So once it comes out of the oven, it's going to cook for another 10 minutes. So you have to keep that in mind if you're cooking steak, fish, chicken, whatever. And that's how you keep your moisture and content higher in there. So if you take it out when you think it's like, oh, it's kind of raw, but if you realize it's going to cook for 10 more minutes, on the counter, then you have to put that into your calculation.
And will it cook kind of at that same temperature almost?
Basically,
it'll sit. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So fish. So continue with fish, like grilling fish. You mentioned earlier about boiling water. Poaching salmon is a really great way to do it. It's really healthy. You can actually make kind of an aromatic broth and then put your salmon in there. So basically taking your water and then putting your spices in there, pepper, salt it a little bit, maybe put maybe some dill in the water so the salmon will suck that flavor in. And it's pretty easy. Boil the water, you just slam it in there for 5-10 minutes and then take it out.
And that's a piece of salmon. It's not in a bag or anything like that. You just drop it straight in the water,
straight in,
and it doesn't fall apart.
That's where you have to keep your eye on it. So that's where the overcooking comes in.
Okay. So, So I've never tried that, and that sounds interesting to me. So you put all the spices into the water rather than on the fish.
Right.
Bring it to a boil. Or do you bring it to boil then put the spices in?
You want to put the spices in first and bring it to a boil, and then you want to bring it to the boil. And then you want to turn your water down so it just kind of barely bubbles, because you don't want that agitating action, because that'll definitely make salmon chowder after a while. So having that kind of like a low bubble, kind of a softly boiling is a great way to do that.
And I know different weights and thicknesses and all that, but your rough idea, how long would you do that then?
5-8 minutes, somewhere in there. Yeah, I just gotta check it.
I'll have to try that sometime. I haven't done that. I think I've I do a lot of it on the grill because we have weather here that we can usually grill all year long, and just only now even just getting comfortable with like putting the fish directly on the grill, especially like flesh side down. Right. So if you're grilling, my original point was I do a lot with like aluminum foil.
Sure.
But if you cover it with aluminum foil, that seems to end up kind of poaching it. Is that it it's steaming its own self?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, do you put any like herbs and stuff in your foil when you do that?
I usually cover the salmon with like dill, thyme, and lemon. That's pretty simple, straightforward.
Yeah,
everyone kind of can agree with it that tastes all right. I sometimes will play with more like mesquite flavors.
Sure.
Or if I know the kids aren't eating with us that night or something, I might go a little more exotic.
Sure.
But they're often the dictators of taste.
Yes.
So then with salmon on the grill, you want to start with it flesh side down?
Yeah, and the thing about a grill too, you want to make sure it's cured so it doesn't stick and it's hot enough. That's usually the mistake a lot of people make when it's not hot enough, and then you think it's done and you pull it up and half of your salmon's left on the grill.
Yeah, that's what scares people.
Yeah.
$25 mistake or something.
Yeah, basically. So for me, I always have like a nice grill brush, and I'll heat my grill up, brush it, and then I'll come back with like a paper towel of olive oil and brush it on there or some sort of oil to make so it kind of makes it non-stick a little bit, and then throwing it skin side down and just leaving it there. You don't need to flip it.
You don't need to flip it.
Unless you really want like some charred stuff on there. There's definitely enough heat since you're closing the grill that eventually it'll...
Is there a per pound method to how long or what temperature you want to keep the grill at?
I usually do mine around like 300 to 400, sear it on one side and then maybe have a lower, and just kind of keep it there. And then I turn it down. And usually after a while, then you get that nice caramelization. And then I think I check it after maybe, 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes. And then you can flip it like a quarter to do like the cross hatching.
You get that fancy look.
The fancy
look. You see it like the Whole Foods deli.
Exactly. It's just a quarter turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you work all day cooking and doing all this stuff. Do you get home and like the last thing you want to do is cook and your wife's like, what do you want to eat? And you're like, I don't care. Just make something.
Yeah.
Or are you just coming in the door like excited to go cook again?
It depends on the day.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like you, sometimes I work 14-hour days and it's like, okay, I'm just going to have a stack of Kraft singles and this is how it's going to go. I won't shy away from that. But a lot of times and I think it's one of those questions you asked me before we started talking. It's like, well, how do you prep, 4 or 5 days out and what do you do? This is where it gets into I have one day where I like do a production day, like on a Sunday, where I cut all my veg, cut all my onions, and just have them in containers. And so when I get home, I don't have to do all the chopping. I can just take it out of the container, throw it in the pan, and go from there. And
let's talk about that. So you do meal prep as well?
Definitely.
Okay, so that's a huge challenge for us. Anybody who works a job, but I know lots of guys I've talked to or who they get in their patrol car. And they've either got a cooler or a wallet full of cash to go buy food. And if they got the cooler, that might be the only food they have that day. They may not have access to a microwave because they're stuck in their car. They're eating in their car. Some guys are given breaks where they can maybe find a microwave at a 7-Eleven or something like that and heat stuff up. I'm lucky enough that I'm in close enough proximity to our station or our headquarters, and and we are set up in a way where I'm allowed to come and go from the station. But I know some guys aren't. Once you're gone for the day, unless you are booking evidence or dealing with booking a suspect or any of those things, you're not supposed to be in the station. So meal prep becomes important for anyone who's got to take that stuff with them. You mentioned one good thing right there, which is just prepping all those things in advance. Do you bring food with you to work too, or is that just for when you get home from work and then you have all that stuff ready to go?
Usually, I'm lucky enough to work in a food service, so I eat there.
Yeah.
But also, my wife sometimes works long hours and we just need to eat when we get home. So I usually just do it for like our weekends and then, our Monday through Friday.
So you can't cut up a bunch of onions without knowing you're going to need onions that week. So how do you plan your meals, or what decisions do you make?
Sure. So it's usually a conversation I have with my wife. Okay, what do you want to eat this week? And kind of do an actual, just like a meal plan. Okay, Tuesday we're going to have fish. And then, the next day we'll have chicken. And then maybe we'll do like a baked dish. And then kind of write the prep list that way and do the shopping that way. So I know what I have for my week and I know what I'm going to make. I mean, a lot of times since, I am in the profession, I can just kind of look at the fridge and say, okay, I'll just kind of make that and use it as leftovers. It's just really good to to plan ahead, because I think that's where people kind of fall short. Is like they get home, they're really hungry, and the first thing they go to are the chips because they have to eat, and you're hungry. It's been a long day. So having that kind of planned out on your fridge, okay, so you can kind of go in, you're tired, blurry-eyed, okay, I'm making chicken tonight. Okay, I have everything I need for this.
Do you ever... Probably don't, but do you ever use cookbooks or recipes or anything like that for other people?
Definitely.
Really?
Yeah, and that's the best way to learn different recipes and techniques. I mean, a lot of the best chefs in the world cooked under someone else and learned their recipes and so on and so on. And so I'm always looking at cookbooks, excuse me, and talking to other people about what they've eaten, or even going out and it's like, oh, that was a really great dish. Let's see if I can replicate that at home, and then kind of go from there.
I like doing that. Like if you find something you like and then trying to figure out a way to replicate that. Do you have any cookbook recommendations? I remember the best one I have, Mark Bittman, but how to cook everything.
Yeah,
it's giant.
Yeah,
but it's pretty much got a good basic kind of literally everything. I mean, if you want how to cook anything it's a good starter, it seems to me. Do you have any other suggestions?
I would agree. That's a great book to start with. The Joy of Cooking is also a classic tome that, it's got everything, like how to, poach salmon to throw a dinner party, how to make mixed drinks, it has everything in there. So, really, it's funny because the cookbook industry, they want you to buy all these really nice, beautiful cookbooks, but really you need one, and if you cooked cover to cover in one cookbook, you would know so much. So having how to cook everything, or the Joy of Cooking, if you went through recipe to recipe, you would be pretty accomplished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And very overweight.
Probably.
It's a lot of food.
It is a lot of food. Yeah.
So with one thing that always concerns me, or that always maybe prevents me from doing more prepping than I could, is how long food lasts in the fridge once it's cut up like that. So I mean, like stuff like your onions, peppers, or let me back up a little bit too. One of the ways that I do a lot of meal prep is again on the grill, because it's an easy way to cook chicken, fish, and beef all at the same time.
Right.
And then I'm not. Also, there's no dishes.
Sure.
Or less dishes, but I have 3 different kinds of meals all done at the same time. But then I, divvy it up, put it into my Tupperware. But then 3 or 4 days later, I'm looking at the chicken going, I don't know. Like, what's standard?
Standard's about 3 days. You could probably push it to 4, depending on when you cooked it. The other thing that, especially vegetables, they can do like 4 to 5 days. But your proteins, once they're cooked, you've got about 3 to 4 days on it. And the best way is actually to put a date on it when you cooked it.
Yeah.
Just a piece of tape, date, okay, cooked it here. Because then sometimes you're going through your fridge, like, oh, here's some chicken.
Discover.
Like, I'm not sure when did I make this.
Fish also will last that long?
I'd probably do 3 days, 2 or 3 days on that. But again, if it's in the fridge and it's cold, it should be okay.
Back to salmon, because that's one of our favorites. To eat something healthy with omegas and all that. There seems to be a giant difference between like Atlantic salmon and like sockeye salmon, the much darker red.
Yeah.
It must be. Is it leaner? Because it dries out really fast.
It does. It's the fat content on the sockeye and the Chinook are definitely less. And it depends on farm raised or if it's actually line caught.
Really?
Yeah. Because farm raised, it's almost like it's a farm raised cow. So they definitely give them feed to plump them up, and they're in pens. They don't move around a lot, so they're just there just to get big. And then the line caught ones they're out in the ocean. They're being chased by other predators, and so they're very lean, and so that's why they tend to dry out faster. So then that means your cooking time is almost cut by half.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good one. So another point of, I think, resistance or reluctance for a lot of people is oils. I used to use olive oil for everything, at every temperature and on every surface, and slowly learned that that's probably not the best way to cook. It's not a disaster, but you're not getting the most out of both the oil and the food. And then I did a strict paleo thing that I've rambled on about here for many times, so I won't go back through that. But that's when I used a lot of coconut oil and started using that, and learned of the difference between like the flash point, right? That's what it's called. So the high flash point of coconut oil versus olive oil. Can you, since olive oil seems to be ubiquitous and that's what everyone knows and thinks that you use for cooking, what oils do you recommend? What do you recommend them for? And where does butter even play into that?
Butter's always going to play in it because it's so good.
Yeah.
I usually try to cook with grapeseed oil because it has a high flash point, or also called a smoke point too, like coconut oil. And it doesn't have a lot of flavor, but you can get your pan really, really hot so you have a nice sear on it. Olive oils I normally use for finishing right at the end, especially if it's a nice, like grassy, kind of pungent olive oil right at the end, like on a salad or on a pasta or whatever you're making.
So almost at room temperature then?
Definitely.
Okay, so not even really cooking.
Yeah, a lot of times if I'm not using grapeseed, then I use like a blend of like olive oil and canola and maybe another oil. I think Costco has a really nice blend of something like that you can use. So it still has the qualities of a high high flash point, but also gets a little more flavor in there too.
And so to the flash point, can you define what that is or why that's important with an oil?
Yeah, basically. So olive oil has a low flash point, so it starts smoking and or going to catch fire at a lower temperature.
Bad.
Which is bad. And the other ones like coconut oil have a higher flash point. So,
and that point too, doesn't that when it starts to kind of oxidize and that'll really change the flavor too?
It changes the flavor.
Makes it bitter.
It makes it bitter, and also kind of destroys all your good antioxidants that are in that oil. And it kind of, I think it's creating like free radicals in there, so it's not really good for you. And especially for like really nice olive oils, they that's why they use them at room temperature, and as a finishing.
So grapeseed.
Yeah, grapeseed.
Okay. I just saw almond oil at the store I don't think I've ever seen that before, but that seems like a new. It's new, but it just seems new to me.
Yeah, almond oil, hazelnut oil is really good. Walnut oil. These are great things that are will add flavors. There's definitely they're for finishing. One of the best recipes that I love is like grilled asparagus, chopped up like hazelnuts, and then a little bit of hazelnut oil on that, and salt, pepper, and it's fantastic. Because then the warm asparagus, you'll get like that like hazelnut aromas off it. It's fantastic.
And then there's oil and vinegar. Most people know balsamic.
Sure.
There's a lot of sugar in balsamic.
Yeah.
Well, comparatively anyway. But when, one thing we want to stay away from, or people typically want to stay away from, is dressings, or like those store-bought dressings that are full of God knows what, plus fat and salt and sugars, and a crazy amount of sugar. What is there any vinegars that you like to match with any of those oils, either in a dressing or as a finisher?
Yeah. Usually like red wine vinegars and white wine vinegars are always really good. That's what's in my cupboard right now. So I've got some balsamics of different ages, and then red wine, and then white wine vinegar. And those you can definitely, if you have like a salad, the easiest thing to do is good olive oil, some little good vinegar, salt and pepper, and you're good to go. And you can use those vinegars for marinades, shake it up, and to make your own dressings too. If anyone has like an immersion blender or a Cuisinart or something like that, it's basically, I think it's like a 3-to-1 ratio. So 3 parts oil, 1 part vinegar, and then you can add garlic, shallots, mustard in there too to make your own vinegars, and those will last weeks.
They will.
Yeah.
My wife makes a lot. She plays around a lot with exactly what you just said, but then adding citruses, either orange or lemon. Those seem to work real well too.
Yeah, definitely. And the key for citrus too is the rind on there, because that's where all the essential oils are in citruses, in the rind. So if you have it's called a microplane. It was actually originally a woodworking tool, and some chef got a hold of it. It's like, this is great for Parmesan and lemon zest. And so you just zest that in there, and then that'll add more of a punch for that citrus.
So it's not the what's that? The zester. It's not a zester. It's more like the slicing it off.
Yeah, it's kind of like a zester, but it's like almost like little razor blades on it. It's really small. If you look it up online, you'll find one. But it's about an inch wide, and it kind of looks like a really nice, fine little zester.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. I'm trying to describe it since we're making hand gestures and all that. But I'll put it in the show notes so people can see it. So you cook a lot of meals, obviously, during the day for that many people. You meal prep at home. What's your process for? We talked about meal prep, but the meal planning, like going to the store and shopping, and do the ingredients between Monday night and Wednesday night have an effect on what you decide to eat, or so that you're not buying. The problem, I think, a lot of times with meal prep is you buy, like, you need green onions for one dish, but it's only for the one dish. But now you have a bushel of green onions in your hand, and you only used half, and now they go bad, and then you have that first world guilt of letting food go to waste. So how do you plan your trip to the grocery store?
Well, definitely around the menus and make sure I've got exactly what I need, because it sucks going back to the grocery store because you forgot something. But especially like with green onions, you can use that for garnish or throw them in a salad too. So looking at if you have to, you have to buy a bunch of, green onions or basil, but you only need like a couple tablespoons. So what else can I do with that? They're versatile enough to throw in anything, even into your, if you make a vinaigrette, you can like chop it fine and throw it in and add that. I tend to definitely want to shop. It's just, I never usually go through the aisles. It's always like the perimeter, because that's usually where all the fresh stuff is.
Yeah.
And if I need, if I am doing pasta, I'll go for that. But I tend not to be tempted by going through each of the aisles.
Yeah.
And just
that seems to be the number one shopping recommendation is follow the outside of the store. Don't go down the aisles.
No, don't go down.
Because you're right. Any grocery store you go into, the perimeter is where all the healthy stuff is, and the kind of the staples.
Yeah,
that's when you start going down the like big bulk and pizza and ice cream aisle that you get yourself in trouble. Yes,
definitely. I avoid those as much as I can.
So speaking of being at like the grocery store, and we talked a little bit just a second ago, like Whole Foods. One of the things I do when I need to try and eat healthy, but I didn't meal prep, but I don't want to go totally off the wagon, is I'll use their hot bar. And a lot of grocery stores these days have a hot bar. Whole Foods just happens to have probably the best one.
I would agree.
Even our tiny little one is pretty good, but there's some cities have, I'm sure you've seen them, the Whole Foods that are they're like restaurants.
Yeah.
Huge. But they're making food kind of at the same, not at the same level as you, or at the same quantity, but kind of a micro scale version of that, right? They have to produce, however many pounds of chicken breasts for that dish, because for a couple hundred people that are going to buy that during the hot lunch rush. So they're scaling things much bigger than I would at home. Are there things I should be careful of or cognizant of at the hot bar that are maybe used in the prepping or the taste preparation of these foods that I'm not aware of?
Not really. I think Whole Food cooks pretty clean. And, since it's used for that day, there's probably no preservatives for the most part. I think it's still the same, those healthy choices. Okay, chicken, fish, stay away from the carnitas, which is hard to do because they're really good.
Yeah.
And then having tons of veg in there. So I think it's probably the best option you could have, as opposed to going to like Albertsons or Vons, where it's all like mayonnaise based and it's all pretty disgusting.
Is there like a high level of salt used in the food to make it anything like that? I mean, I know you don't cook there, but I'm saying,
sure.
Would you expect that, or if you have it and you taste it, do you taste it as being high sodium?
There's probably some, because they are almost doing like a restaurant style too, because they want the food to taste good. And when you go to a restaurant, there's this funny chef told me, he's like, if you can't make it taste good, make it salty. Because the salt actually opens up your taste buds and then helps the flavor get in there. So that's why you go to restaurants and it's a little more heavily seasoned than you would at home, just because they want you to taste that. But as for Whole Foods, I would probably suspect they're probably kind of like a mid-range of that. Again, it's probably some of the preparations, like if you've got grilled salmon, grilled chicken, things like that, it's probably not going to be too bad. But if it's like baked or like the rotisserie kind of style, it's definitely a lot of fat going on. How it's usually made is like, so all the fat drippings go onto each other, so it really makes it really nice. But then that the seasoning there is probably a little bit higher than that.
Well, with restaurants and ordering out, one of my favorite books is Kitchen Confidential.
Yeah,
have you ever read that?
Yeah.
I would imagine you would have, but he gives some comments and tips about restaurants, or what days not to order what.
Sure.
Do you have anything like that when you're out at a restaurant, even off duty, but just when you go out to a restaurant, should you be ordering the fish on a Sunday night?
I don't know. I think that was written in the late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah. That's right. Actually, I read that right before I went to culinary school, so it was brilliant. And I'm not sure. I think with the globalization, the ease of people delivering, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Usually if you get fish on a Monday, they're going to deliver it on a Monday. And there's those reputations too. So people want good quality, and especially here. where we live, people are pretty picky and they're really, conscious of where the food's coming from.
Yeah.
So I don't think, for me, I don't really think about it too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other backroom secrets of kitchens that you like? You go to a restaurant and you see something and you go, oh, I know what they're doing. I'm putting you on the spot. I know.
I was going to think. When's the last time? No. There's definitely some stories, about there's especially like in open kitchens too, where people are watching it. There's one story I heard. This guy, they had this, because they always, like, when you're in a kitchen, they say, like, okay, fire 45, okay, fire ticket number 6, and then, but there's also the special ticket for this particular restaurant. It's not in Santa Barbara, so you don't have to worry about it. Where, it was this huge restaurant. They're just going gangbusters, and this guy drops the dish on the floor in the back of the kitchen. And so what they did is, fire 65, and so all the chefs kind of went into a line right in front of it. And the guy went down and picked it back up, and then they kept going. So they kind of did like this, soccer wall of
nothing to see here. Move along.
Yeah, exactly. They're just kind of like, oh, okay, hopefully that wasn't my dish. But,
yeah. That's funny. I have a partner actually. Like, he's a deputy, right? Mm-hmm. He too was a professional chef. He went through CIA.
Oh wow.
But cooked at La Bernardin and the French Laundry and
wow.
quite a few other places himself. And then, like, for I think a variety of reasons, but just up and left and was like, I'm just going to go do this now. And
sure,
he's now with us. But it's funny. He's always entertaining at like a squad barbecue or some department event, and you got cops who are quite happy with a ribeye and or a hot dog and a hamburger,
right.
that kind of group, which is my group. I'm all, ribeye is heaven for me. So,
it's good.
But it's funny because every time he comes to an event, he comes in with his professional like the kitchen quality pans and stuff like that. Still, but he I don't know where he got them. I'm not going to ask if he took them with him from the last place, but the big pans you can't find at the grocery store. Or, at the regular, like, civilian, quote unquote, cooking store. But I don't know where you guys get these pans and all that, and the prep stuff and all that. Anyway, shows up with those, and it's always like, quail that's been, marinating in some crazy concoction he made up, and he's grilled and all that. And
wow.
he always which is great because he always upgrades our barbecues 100%.
Definitely.
And whenever he cooks for the squad or brings food in, he's not with my squad right now, but whenever every once in a while a guy will bring in food for the squad, tri-tip or something like that. And pretty standard stuff, always good, but standard. And then he comes in with these crazy, flan cakes of whatever.
Yeah. Oh, how lovely. Do you guys have, like, I know firehouses have like a firehouse chef or a guy who cooks for do you guys have that too, like, in your squads? Or, but I know that there's probably some like,
oh,
no, not really.
No. They're set up differently than we are, is the honest answer, or the diplomatic answer. They are reactive by nature, so they respond to calls.
Okay.
So, fire trucks don't go out, drive around looking for people in car accidents or looking for fire, blowing out the top of your house. They just don't do that. That's just not the way they're set up. So they're stationary.
Okay.
And because they're stationary, they have, and for, I don't know where this started, but for, most fire stations work in 24-hour cycles. Do have friends who are firefighters who work like 48 hours on and then 48 hours off, or even 72 hours on. That's a little long. And some work 24 hours. So you work like 8 a.m. to 8 a.m. So you're spending your whole day there, right? So you have to cook. Right. You're sleeping there overnight.
Sure.
So it's much more of like a residence setup. Okay. Right. I don't know why they do that, because you got to go into the public policy issues of it. There's all sorts of like overtime issues that come up for, because you're paying guys 48 hours instead of 40.
Sure.
But we joke at my station that we when the fire department and the sheriff's department were hiring, we got in the wrong line.
Yeah.
They're definitely loved, and everyone looks to the fire department, especially here where we have a lot of forest fires that have really burned a lot of homes and threatened lives and all that. So I totally get that, and I have to give them their due because we work very closely with them, and they do amazing things that I would never want to do. And I think that they would probably say the same thing. So we have a good working relationship with them. Yes, there is a little bit of a sibling rivalry. And that's exactly what it is too, because we will crack jokes about the fire department all day long.
Right.
I mean, you know why God made firemen? Because, do you know, I'm going to screw that up. Do you know why God made cops?
No.
Because firemen still need heroes.
Oh, nice. I love that.
But it's like a brother-sister relationship, right? Or a younger brother, older brother relationship. Like, we will crack on each other behind each other's backs all day long. I will bitch about the fact they get to work out on duty,
right?
And get paid for it, and then go sit in their Barca lounger and watch the football game,
right?
While I'm out driving around in my vest and gear and crap and dealing with all this nonsense.
Sure.
But the minute someone else starts to rag on them from outside of first responder network or whatever, it's like, whoa, hey, that's my brother there. You got to watch yourself.
Got it.
Luckily for the firemen, they don't get a whole lot of grief, I don't think,
right.
For most people, at least the ones that I know. So, but no, they do have the ability to go out and shop and cook. They have a full kitchen. They even have a budget, so they're not even having to put forth for a lot of this food. And they make a lot of meals together.
Sure.
We did have a incident here recently where firemen were cooking dinner, and they got a call, and they didn't turn the stove off. And the fire ended up being at their station.
Oh, man. Wow, that's hard to live down.
Nobody gave them crap about that.
Yeah.
Nobody. Yeah, no, we let that slide completely.
That's probably a good idea.
No, it was, of course, the irony was hilarious to us.
Yeah, of course.
I don't think the captain found it very funny, but
definitely.
We were laughing. But yeah, no, I wish we did. And we work, law enforcement works either 8, 10, or typically 8, 10, or 12 hour cycles. So you're never at work. I'm always at work, day shift, I'm at work for breakfast and lunch.
Okay.
Night shift is a little different. I'm there for kind of like what normal people would be dinner. But for me, it's kind of a breakfast. And you really are there for all 3 meals, because by the time you're off at 6 a.m., that's kind of your dinner time. But, snacks and stuff like that throughout the day or the night too. I'm sure there are departments out there that have facilities. We just don't have them. And actually, I take that even back. We could go into our dispatch center, and they got a kitchen. But again, I could be, halfway through a meal and sauteing something on the stove, and if I got a call, I got to go. Yeah. And then your food's ruined and all that anyway. So cooking while on duty doesn't make much sense. Because the way fire departments, again, are structured, they can often leave a guy behind.
Right.
To, stay with the house. I wish we could do that and, know that I was going to have a dedicated hour. And I think eating together, you probably understand this. I think the act of eating together or eating with someone, breaking bread with someone, is an important bonding experience. So when you're in a profession like ours as well, I think it's that's a benefit, with these people that you're doing so much with, in other ways. So, back on track, because I'm rambling about the fire department. Don't get me started. EMS guys, they're cool. I don't know why I couldn't do that job. Yeah. Oh God. I'm kidding to all the firemen, by the way. What are some meals or some recipes? Are there any that you can just throw out there that don't necessarily need a lot of instruction, but that can maybe get someone started on trying a few things and getting their first week of meal prep under their belt?
Sure. A couple ideas. Earlier in the show, I mentioned, onions and peppers. There's a style of cooking called a provençal, which is basically a lot of onions and peppers sauteed, and then you put then you take that out of your pan, then you put your fish and chicken, sear that, put your onions and peppers back in there, and then throw it in the oven and just let it bake. The roasting and those types of preparations are probably your easiest thing to do, because it doesn't require you to always look over it and be attentive to it. So you can just put everything together like on a roasting pan, throw it in the oven, set your timer, clean up, do whatever else you need to do, and then come back to it. So if you do, cut carrots, parsnips, potatoes, olive oil, or some sort of oil, herbs, spices, and roast that in the oven, about for 3/4 of the way done. So best way to do is take a knife, test it to see if the potatoes are done or not, and then add like a roast chicken on that top. Or, having that going and then grilling your chicken also on the side. So a lot of the keys too is your kitchen timing. And it's probably a big question too people have. It's like, oh, when is this done? When should I start it? What should I do first? Things like vegetables, especially root vegetables that are roasted, can sit for a while and they take some time, so then you can do other things. So for me, when I'm cooking, I definitely put those in first, then go out and grill, and then that lets my meat rest before even the starches are done. So I think it's important to realize how long things are going to take. And that's, in batch cooking, that's why, cook a ton of rice, put it in bags, put it in your freezer, take it out. That's, for me, if I was going to start doing that, I would probably grill off maybe like 6 or 7 chicken breasts, have those going, and then put those into bags. Kind of like what you were talking about, kind of portioning everything out. And then once I'm done through my week, the only thing I would really have to cook would be my vegetables that I've chopped up, and onions, peppers. Those are all staples of everything, and especially if you're doing some other dishes, having celery around too, and kind of going from there.
And peppers, green peppers or red peppers, yellow, any
color. You kind of want to eat your colors anyway, to go kind of like on the nutritional side of things. So you need like your reds, yellows, your greens. And then it makes it more interesting too when it's on your plate. It's not just like I've got white rice, I've got a white chicken breast, I've got potatoes. It's all white,
You mentioned like checking a potato for it's done. You want that knife to come out clean. Is that how you check it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So it's not getting the starchy stuff on the.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, when you take it out, you do have that carryover cooking too, so it is going to cook a little bit more. You
mentioned this in this the resting meat, and we mentioned with the fish and how fish is going to cook for another 10 minutes. But does that go for any other meat as well?
Yeah,
chicken and steak?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
What's the resting process for?
It's basically what happens is when you're cooking the meat, it really tightens up. And so what you want it to do, and when it's resting, so the meat relaxes again and the juices go back where they need to go. Because if you've taken like a tri-tip off the grill right off the bat, cut it, you see all this juice run all the way out, and it's like, oh, that's the good stuff, But if you let it rest for 10, 15 minutes, it'll relax, it'll cool down, the juices will go back into it. So when you slice it, you won't get that much.
The moisture will stay there.
The moisture will stay there. Yeah, exactly.
I see.
Exactly.
A challenge I always have is cooking like with bone-in chicken. I always undercook.
Yeah.
How much more time should I be adding to a bone-in breast versus a boneless breast?
Probably add another like 10 minutes.
Okay.
10, 15 minutes. Yeah. Yeah.
It always drives me insane. And I did it this week even. I meal prepped. I cooked. I did what I told you. I cooked. Actually, I tried something new. I tried a farmer's chicken, which was a disaster. Inspired again by Whole Foods. I was like, I can do that. But no, I couldn't. Not this time anyway. But then I bring it to work after it had sat in the fridge and, microwave it again for another 2.5, 3 minutes or whatever and cut into it. And it was, it was like still very clearly pink and towards the bone. So I was like, eh.
Yeah. What we do, even though if we're cooking for 10 or, 1,000 people, I think we do it like for 300 for like an hour and a half.
You do it for like a bone-in breast for 3.5 hours?
Or no, for like a leg. Yeah. For like an hour.
Oh, that makes sense. Then I way undercooked.
Yeah.
At 300?
Yeah, 300. So it's kind of a slower cooking, and so then it's like some of the best chicken that I've had.
I was also cooking it too hot. Then I was like 425.
425. Yeah. So with the heat's on that, so it's really hot on the outside. So you'll have your layers that'll be cooked and it'll look nice and brown, but then it doesn't have enough time to get into the middle of it. So if you do it at a lower temperature for longer, it'll allow the heat to penetrate all the way through.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Don't know why I didn't catch that. I didn't get that memo beforehand.
Well, the thing about roasting, you do want that great color, especially if you're doing like a ribeye or something like that, or the chicken. You can do it at 425, get that nice color, and then turn your oven down to 325, 300, and then let it cook the rest of the way that way.
Well, I'll try that later today because I was going to try and redo it. Thanks for being here. This was fantastic. I learned a lot, and I fancy myself as having some knowledge of all this. I certainly have enough cookbooks to consider myself an amateur.
Yeah.
But no, all these things are all good points, and I hope that people can use this. I think they will use this and be able to say, take a little bit of knowledge with them as they go to the store and try to figure these things out.
Yeah, I hope so.
Awesome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Great.
All right.
All right, everybody, as always, thanks for listening. Now, what I suggest you do for this show, if you haven't done it before, this is the one to do it. Go to the show notes for this episode, and you will see some videos that Joel has put together that really demonstrate a lot of the techniques and some concepts that we talked about here, and I think they'll help you get started. We'll also have good links in the show notes to some of the equipment we talked about if you're looking to purchase some things. I'll do a disclosure right here and say that some of the links, if they go to Amazon, go to an affiliate page for us, so that if you do purchase through Amazon, we get a small commission. It doesn't raise the price of any of the equipment for you, but it's a little kickback to us as part of being an Amazon affiliate. But I use Amazon for the links mostly because it's just easy, because they sell almost everything that you could possibly imagine, and it's the easiest place to make these purchases and get them all shipped to you. So, but check those out. Check out the videos from Joel too. They're great, and they give a lot of good information. Follow us at The Squad Room on Twitter and Instagram. Shoot us a 5-star review on iTunes, and let us know what you think of the show. And if you really want to talk with us, I'd love to hear from you. squadroompodcast@gmail.com. All right, have a good week. Stay safe. Take care of each other.